Welcome to our Devos, folks, and we have been talking about the beautiful truth that God is still speaking. Yesterday, I talked about how God speaks through His Word primarily. If you missed that, go back and review that because it's so vital, okay? But today, I just want to put this all on the line that we have a connection to God that most of us on a regular basis do not ever recognize. And it's the biggest shame in our faith. So I'm going to share an illustration with you. It's not the best illustration, but this is how I think. Do you remember that movie from the 1980s, When a Stranger Calls? Okay, I think they remade it a couple times, but it's an older movie from the 1980s. I saw it when I was like 10, and it scared me so bad. Oh my goodness. Okay, but essentially, it's a scary movie, all right? And it sets up that there's a woman and she's babysitting kids and she put the kids to bed, all right? So already it's scary. Just that concept is scary. And she starts getting phone calls to the landline, because they didn't have cell phones back then, the landline in the house, all right? You know the line of this movie if you already know where I'm going. Like, the person's like saying, scary things, like, where are you? Are you alone? And you're like, it's really creepy and it's freaky. And so after like the fourth or fifth time, she calls the police. And she says, look, this guy's calling me all night. I'm babysitting these kids. I'm getting freaked out. And what happens? The police say, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to trace these calls. We're going to find out where this guy's calling you from. And we are going to arrest him. We're going to go question him. And so she feels, encouragement. So guy calls again, scares her. She hangs up the phone. And then the next scene is the worst one of the entire movie. And that's the scene where she gets one more call and she says, leave me alone. And the police go, God, you got to get out of there. Gotta get out of there, lady. This guy is calling you from inside your house. And you're like sitting there watching that. You're like, the whole time. He's been in the house the whole time. And then you see the door open. It just burned in my memory, okay? Now it's burned in yours. What's the point of this? Well, I just like talking about it. What if there isn't a point? No, here's the point. The point is, the greatest communicator through God is the fact that God is dwelling within you, and that is the Holy Spirit. He's dwelling in your house. He's dwelling in your temple. He is always with you. Jesus promised this. And so if you ever think, I don't know how God could communicate with me, I feel so far from God, saying I feel far from God is almost an oxymoron at times, because the Holy Spirit, the living, dwelling presence of God, the Spirit that raised Jesus from the grave, also dwells within you, okay? Don't forget that. God can speak to you from within the house, and it won't be scary. The Holy Spirit has a very, very pointed role in our lives. And He is so loving and so gentle and so encouraging. And He is fully God, just as Jesus was fully God, just as God the Father is fully God. So I don't want you to miss the importance of this. If you want to hear from God, if you're desperately seeking Him, if you're desperately wanting God to show you, let you hear His voice, you have the Holy Spirit. He's right there with you. So proximity is not the issue. Here's Jesus' promise, John chapter 16, verse 13. When the Spirit of truth comes, He will guide you into all truth. For He will not speak of His own authority, but whatever He hears, He will speak. And He will declare it to you, the things that are to come. One of the things I love about this verse is Jesus explains that the Spirit is going to be like a guide of all truth. He's going to not speak of His own authority. So He's not going to speak in a way that contradicts what we already know is true of Jesus and what we already know is true of God the Father. But it says that whatever He hears, whatever He testifies of what is going on in heaven and the will of the Father, He will declare it to you, the things that are to come. Now, I'm going to say this repeatedly throughout the scriptures, or throughout the weeks, when we talk about what the scriptures say about God speaking. This is a miraculous and mystical experience. But this experience is not necessarily independent, okay? And what I mean by that is, and I know, of a psycho that says God is talking to him, right? You look at any cult. the Heaven's Gate cult, the NXIVM cult. I've been watching a lot of documentaries about cults lately, and I think there's something wrong with me. I got to get counseling about it. I don't know. But one of the common denominators, well, first of all, usually they pollute Christ in some way, shape, or form. This is not a discussion of cults. But here's one thing that usually happens. They will say that God spoke to them, that God has revealed to them something, not to you, but to them. Like they have this revelation, okay? I was sitting there and God told me to build this warehouse and fill it with people that are going to, commit mass suicide or whatever. They have this vision and they become devoted to this vision. But the Holy Spirit works differently in that the Holy Spirit guides you into all truth. 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 Hear this. Truth is not subjective. Meaning like, oh, what's true for you ain't true for me. I got my own truth. You got your truth. That's not what truth is. Truth is objective. It's verifiable. Truth is the literal embodiment of God himself. Jesus called himself the way, the truth, and the life. So when we say, well, God spoke to me, God spoke to me and told me I have to dump, and I've heard this too. God help you if you're thinking of saying something like this. God spoke to me and said, I should dump my wife. I should go marry this other girl because she is so much nicer. God was speaking to me. I want to let you know, my friend, that's not God. If it's not leading you into the truth of what you know of God, who Christ is, what the scriptures teach, it's not truth. Now, enough of the negative. Here's what you need to realize. You have the Holy Spirit. Jesus said he's there to guide you. Jesus said you're never going to be alone. And the Holy Spirit will always be with you. And he will always, if you're trying to hear from God, give you the ability to listen to God and be guided in truth and be guided in the things that please God because God is still speaking.